Hey, you over there. Yeah, I see you. You're thinking about starting your own podcast, aren't you? Well, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain because I have some experience here. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. Totally free to record, edit, and distribute your podcast. It doesn't get any better than that. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello. Welcome to episode 6 of Ayana Explains It All. This week, we're going to talk about microaggressions. It's been in the news lately in Florida. There's 2 bills that are waiting for the Governor DeSantis's signature concerning what teachers can and cannot discuss in the classroom because parents have rights over their children's education, and as well as what employers can and cannot do to employees as far as what they can talk about, as far as what they can say, their behavior, et cetera, et cetera. It's all meant to protect the vulnerable class of Americans, and by vulnerable, I mean they just exist. Class of Americans who feel put upon by woke culture and you can't joke around anymore culture and having to hear about white people putting blacks into American slavery and having to hear about homosexuality and transgendered people and whatever else we can think of. People shouldn't have to hear these things or talk about them or know that we're different or see that we're different and explore the differences. So, and there's also suddenly this rush of the return to the office when people have worked from home for 2 years. I've been home for 2 years. I have been home for 2 years, and it has really worn me down. And despite my love of being home, I love my house. I would love to get back to the office, but my return to the office is going to be delayed a bit. So I'm still home and I'm still going to be doing this podcast. I'm going to be bringing you guys all of the love and attention and explanations because you all don't Google and you're using these words and you're not using them correctly, and you're saying these things, and you're doing these things that don't make any sense. And I want to help you figure out what you're doing, why you're doing it. Is it because this happened to you when you were a child, etc., etc. So last week we talked about empathy. And so one of the ways empathy plays into our daily lives is with how we interact with people in conversations. And sometimes we can be kind of a jerk because we lack empathy. And so we end up saying something really kind of screwball-y, like racist, but we didn't know it was racist, or sexist, but we didn't know it was sexist. So I don't know if anyone currently who wasn't old enough. Well, if you watch Seinfeld, I'll just say that. There are a lot of people who are watching it now because it's on, I think it's on Netflix. But I grew up with Seinfeld, watching Seinfeld. And there's an episode in season 5 where Jerry wants to apologize to Elaine for making her ride the subway. They were all at George's house and they were doing some things. And then, you know, they had gotten there. And then Elaine wanted to go and Jerry couldn't go and blah, 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 whatever. So it was a big deal that he wanted to apologize to her. So he buys her a cigar store Indian. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen this before, but in a cigar store or even at some party stores, some liquor stores, they would have this Indian figure, this tall Indian statue, just ridiculously looking thing. And I don't know the history behind it, but it's called a cigar store Indian because you usually saw them in cigar stores. And it would be like at the front. And it's, tobacco is usually associated with peace pipes, and peace pipes are associated with Native Americans and blah, blah, blah. So Jerry buys this cigar store Indian for Elaine and he takes it to her apartment. And at the time, Elaine is having a get together with her girlfriends. I think they were playing cards or something. And she answers the door. Jerry knocks on the door. She answers the door. And Jerry is standing behind the cigar store Indian. And he's going, hey, ya hum, hey, ya hum. And, just that mocking Native American, quote unquote, chant that people do, that they think this is what all Native Americans sound like. And he's making that noise, and he's making the Indian rock back and forth, and he's going, and he just tells a little joke about Indians. And Elaine's friend, who is named Winona, gets up, says her goodbyes, and walks out. And Jerry is dumbfounded. He's like, what's going on? And Elaine goes, Winona is a Native American. And Jerry is like, oh, completely caught off guard, made a total ass of himself. And, that's racist. That's racism. But it's subtle. It's passive. It's not like he's bringing this thing here and saying, look, this is what all, and he's using the word Indian instead of Native American. He's going, hey, look, this is what all Native Americans look like. This is what all Indians look like. And they all do this and they all make this noise. That's like overt. But this is Jerry just being silly, telling jokes, thinking he's being funny because he's a comedian and everything. But it's racist. That's a microaggression. And so Jerry and this girl kind of hook up, and he goes on a date with her, and he wants to, I think he wanted to take her to a concert, and he couldn't find tickets. So he was like, I'll go see a scalper. And he couldn't bring himself to say the word scalper or Indian giver. He couldn't bring himself to say these little euphemisms around this woman who's Native American. It made him stop and think about these things before he said them. And, he's not alone. How many of us have used these phrases such as gypped, Indian giver, all blacks are the same, all Puerto Ricans are the same, all Mexicans are the same, all Indians, whatever other, all Italians are the same. Or you can't trust young black men, or you can't trust Mexicans. Remember the Donald Trump speech where he said the Mexicans are rapists and gangsters? Or how people are portrayed in movies. Arabs are portrayed as terrorists. Even before then, Russians were portrayed as terrorists. Irishmen were portrayed as terrorists because of the Troubles back in the day. And Africans are portrayed as silly and stupid. And Mexicans are portrayed as drug dealers and drug lords. And anybody who's from South America is a drug lord in a movie or even a TV show. I myself find it very hard to watch TV now when there's that storyline about a drug cartel. You automatically know it's going to be about someone who's Mexican or from Central America or from South America. And it's just going to I just roll my eyes at it, because please come up with something new. And anytime there's a storyline about an Arab, of course, they're terrorists. They're blowing things up. They're alleged to be bad guys. They're alleged to have sleeper cells. It's just, the tropes are so maddening. But the big word that we use to describe these microaggressions, a word developed by psychiatrist Chester M. Pierce in the 1970s, is not really sufficient to explain the racist, sexist, ableist, body-shaming, colorist, xenophobic, transphobic, homophobic language we often face from others when they're being obtusely sometimes passively, daftly, ugly, secretly, or even overtly bigoted. When they're being prejudiced, when they're being hurtful to someone with their inquisitions and implications, their inquiries, their put downs, their jokes. I mean, if I go anywhere, automatically somebody's thinking of something to ask me about being Muslim. Or they don't even know I'm Muslim, so they want to ask me something about what country they think I'm from. And I face this a lot at Notre Dame. Or even in the workplace, I face this a lot. People have questions about where I'm from. They think I'm from some exotic place. And when I tell them I'm from East Cleveland, they're like, oh, that's not what I expected. This happened to me in my sub-Saharan Africa class. I believe I was a junior. I could have been a sophomore. I don't remember. It's all a blur. Just go with me here. The professor, severely aged white male, who is from South Africa. And he's very knowledgeable, knows everything he's talking about. And one day in class, he's going on and on and on about this. And I'm just sitting there enthralled. And he looks at me and he goes, "Isn't that right, sister?" He was asking me something about the region. And he goes, "Isn't that right, sister?" And I looked at him dead in his face and I said, "I don't know. I'm from East Cleveland, Ohio." Like you could see his face just go, oh, he was either shocked or embarrassed. I don't know what that look is, but I get that look from people so many times when they find out that I'm just a black girl from East Cleveland, Ohio. My parents were black. They're from, Cleveland. My family is from Mississippi and Virginia. And before that, Mississippi and Virginia. And before that, they were slaves brought here. And people are so fascinated with the potential, what they believe I am. And then they're disappointed when they find out that I'm just another black girl. Well, I mean, I'm pretty fabulous, actually. But they think I'm exotic. And by exotic, I mean, West Indian or Nigerian or Senegalese or South African or Kenyan, they're that fantasy that they have in their head of what African women, the generic African woman is like, and I'm it, and they can't wait to talk to me and hear me speak my tribal language or French or Spanish or whatever the case may be, and tell them about all of the wonderful food that I can cook and how life here is so different from life in my country. And I'm just like, sorry, I can't help you. I'm from East Cleveland. I mean, I cook. I can cook. I can cook some foods you have probably heard of. I mean, I can prepare some fried chicken or some macaroni and cheese. But I don't know nothing else about this other stuff over here. I'm so sorry. You built that up in your head. You decided what I was, and that's not me. But here's who I am. And so I would have to launch into this whole explanation of where I'm from and how my people became Muslim and how long I've been Muslim and what I'm doing with my life now. And it's just everywhere I go, I'm having to explain myself. Any new setting, I'm having to explain myself. Any new job, I'm having to explain myself. Any, conference or whatever, even among Muslims, we do this. Even among Muslims, we do this. The way I grew up is with a community of Muslims that was made up of people from all over the world, all over the U.S., all over the world. But there's this certain thing, this prejudice that certain people from certain regions of the world have about black people being Muslim. They don't understand how we became Muslim. They don't understand how Islam reached the United States without an Arab person or an Indian person or a Bangladeshi person. I did not say that correctly. Is it Bengali? Bangladeshi? Desi. That's my friend Victoria is going to kill me because her husband is Desi. I am so sorry. Forgive me, please. But how did black people become Muslim? if there was no one of those people to come here and tell us about Islam and bring Islam to us. I mean, Islam in America dates back to the American slavery days. That's how Islam got here. Black Muslims brought Islam to America. And we know how Islam got to Africa. You know, Arabs through their trading with various African nations, African tribes, brought Islam to Africa. Arabs spread Islam all over the world. But it came to the U.S. through black slaves. And a lot of them were made to be Christian, of course, but a lot of them held on to it. But my people became Muslim. I explained my parents were in the Nation of Islam, and then they left the fold and they became Muslims. They became believers in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the last prophet and messenger, and that Allah is one, and that was it. We didn't need anybody else to tell us how to do this. But there were people in our communities who did not understand how we became Muslim. And I remember one time I was at someone's house. We would go to people's houses and things and sit down and read and discuss the religion and how to practice the religion. And there were these women there from Bangladesh, and they asked me, I was just a little kid, they asked me how I became Muslim. And I said, I was born into Islam. And they laughed so hard. I mean, they got a kick out of that. And I looked at them like, I mean, did I say something? I didn't think I said anything funny, but it's funny to them. Why is it funny to them? Oh, right, because you're black and you're not supposed to be born into Islam. Black American people aren't born into Islam. We're reverts, right? We're not born into the religion. No, a lot of us are born into the religion, honey. I mean, according to Islam, all of us are born into the religion, and our parents make us Christian or Catholic or Jewish or whatever. That's Islam. But I was born and raised in the religion. I know it's hard to believe because I don't look like you, but here it is. But there's so much of that in the religion, but also when it comes to how women are treated. There's so much misogyny and nastiness and pettiness and sexualizing of young girls and treatment of women, relegating us to the stereotypical housewife who wants to stay at home and take care of the daily needs of the house and just pump out a bunch of babies. We're not supposed to be out there in the career field having our own and bringing it to the household. We're not supposed to be putting our children in daycare. We're not supposed to be, working outside the house around men and et cetera, et cetera. But there are so many Muslim women who are doctors and engineers and lawyers and teachers and nurses and, entrepreneurs. And we're all doing this. But still there are people who would say, well, Muslim women aren't supposed to do that. And you'll hear that in the language that they use. You'll hear that in the conversations that they use. You'll hear this from the male members of your family if you're a Muslim woman. I certainly heard it all the time, but I ended up where I ended up because I don't buy into that crap. I tried it. I tried to do it, but I was told that I had to be, the woman who had to go to school and go to work and then also come home and do all of the house stuff, do the dishes, do the grocery shopping, do the laundry, keep the house clean. But I was also expected to go out and make a living and bring home money too. You can't have it both ways. But anyway, back to microaggressions. So, as I said before, microaggressions are sometimes loud, like when someone tells a joke loudly, and they can reverberate in whatever setting you're in. If you're at work, if you're with a group of friends, in your relationship, if you're at school. A lot of times this happens at school, and it's one of the reasons why kids want to be homeschooled, because they don't want to have to deal with people making jokes about them. If they're gay, if they're trans, if they're Muslim, if they're Jewish, and they have to wear any kind of religious garb, if they're Sikh and they have to wear a turban daily, people don't want to have to explain who they are or what they are. They don't want to have to feel like they have to justify it. People just want to be people. People just want to go to where they go and just be either left alone, or you embrace me and let me tell my story. Don't ask me a bunch of questions. Let me unfurl, as it were, in my own time, in my own way. But we can't do that. As soon as somebody walks into a room who looks different from us, we want to go, oh, okay, what type of Asian are you? When we see an Asian person. Like, are you like Chinese, Vietnamese? Are you Thai? Are you Taiwanese? Like, we can't help ourselves. You're Native American? Oh, so you don't live on a reservation. You like live in a house, right? We cannot help ourselves. And sometimes we just make total asses of ourselves. But that's what these microaggressions are. And so for me, my first like real understanding of microaggressions, though I've been subject to them my entire life, the word microaggression first came to me when the movie Get Out premiered, the Jordan Peele movie Get Out. And it was showing, like how I like to say, microaggressions are the way in which liberals show how they're racist, sexist, ableist, xenophobic, transphobic, etc., etc. This is the way in which liberals do it. Like, there are other people, Republicans, GOP candidates even, who are overtly, completely, absolutely, 100% outwardly racist, sexist, ableist, transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic. They'll tell you to your face. You show up to their town, there's a sign that says no blacks, no Jews. But then there are people who are well-meaning, who are your neighbors, who are, your doctor, who are your dentist, who are your co-workers, who they seem nice and sweet and like they're very open and welcoming, and you don't have to explain yourself to them. And then you're at lunch at work one day and they say something out of left field like, yeah, my dad said that he met a Muslim and this guy was just talking all kinds of crazy about America, like death to America. You're not like that, are you? And then you look your head up from your sandwich and you're like, oh God, not this, please. I thought I was safe. But this is where, people are very subtle about it. And sometimes those people are people we think are safe. People who wear the safety pins that call themselves a safe space. Remember that safety pin shit that people were doing? And it was, I can't remember when I think that's when Trump, the year that Trump was elected, and people were like, no, I'm a safe space. I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. I'm not, I'm not anti-Arab or whatever. Here's a safety pin. If you feel put out, if you feel unsafe, come, sit next to me on the bus and I'll make you feel it. I'll make you feel safe. I'll make you feel secure. I won't say bad things to you. I won't say bad things about your people. I won't ask you questions about yourself. So, people call this wokeism. I won't bother to define that word because you know what it means. It means you're aware of the subtle ways in which people can be racist and sexist, for instance, and you ain't putting up with it anymore. You're tired of it. You're tired of it. You're tired of the jokes at people's expenses. You're tired of the people in power saying these ridiculous things about Mexicans and Muslims and Pakistanis and Africans, and you're tired of it. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear people making stereotypes. You don't want to hear people telling, a funny story about this Indian guy that I met at this store, and you're using this stupid ass mock Indian accent to tell the story. People don't want to hear it. It's not funny. It's not cute. And yeah, you may have been able to get away with it in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And that's because people were afraid to speak up. This stuff really bothered them, but we became conditioned to think it was okay, that people really don't mean any harm by it. Oh, it's just funny. That Archie Bunker show wouldn't survive today. With woke culture and canceling everyone, you wouldn't be able to. First of all, Can we talk about Archie Bunker? Yeah, he was a well-meaning person. Well-meaning. Oh, he was a product of his time. Yeah, well, guess what? His time was shit. And he was shit. And I don't care who disagrees. You agree, disagree, whatever. I do not care. That shit is not funny. He was a jerk. He was an ass who made an ass of himself. And his family tried to drag him out of it. His daughter Gloria tried to drag him out of it. His son-in-law Mike tried to drag him out of it. And try as he might, he couldn't be led out of that thinking that women were supposed to do one thing and black people were supposed to do one thing. And, you know, the black people are here to take advantage of you, or the Jewish people are here to take advantage of you. And women are supposed to be in the kitchen cooking, and his daughter wanted to have a job and everything. And everything bothered him. Everything bothered him because there were more people who didn't look like him coming into his neighborhood, coming into where he worked. And he was just so bothered. But it was hilarious. It was hilarious to watch this white, racist, sexist piece of shit trip all over himself and make a fool of himself. And okay, funny, entertainment value, great, wonderful. But there are people now in 2022 who still act like that, who still think like that, and who are very vocal about it. And there's nothing funny about this, okay? There's nothing funny about making people who don't look like you feel uncomfortable because of who they are. Even if it's just a joke you're telling. Even if it's just a joke you're telling. The jokes, expressions, I didn't mean any harm by it statements make people feel small, unwelcomed, insignificant. The person you say these things to it might make them feel like they do not fit in to whatever environment they're trying to fit into. A specific workplace, an office, a university setting. You know, I attended the University of Notre Dame, conservative Catholic. I came from a conservative Muslim household, but I felt like an outsider, but at the same time, I felt like I could kind of fit in because there wasn't a lot of, there was no co-ed living, so to speak. So there was no co-ed living. And the boys had to be out of the girls' dorms at a certain time and vice versa. And so I could really kind of just go into my dorm and like take my hijab off and walk around. I mean, it was still an adjustment because I was the only, as far as I knew, the only black Muslim person there. But it was still an adjustment because I was black, and my roommate freshman year was white and from a dairy farm. Her family owned a dairy farm in Rochester, Minnesota. And so we were like night and day. Like, not like, you know, I was night and she was day. Okay, no. We were like night and day. Everything she knew about black people came from TV. But I knew about white people because there were whites in the Islamic community. There were white people. I was on the speech and debate team. And so I interacted with white students, Asian students at other high schools all the time. So I knew things. I knew a lot of things. So having a white roommate didn't bother me. Probably having a black roommate bothered her. I remember one time my mother sent me some collard greens. She was always sending me food. One time she sent me some collard greens and I warmed them up in the microwave, and my roommate was like, "Ew, what is that smell?" And I was like, "It's collard greens." She had no idea what a collard green was. And that blew my mind. But, you know. So I mentioned people will tell jokes. Like, there are comedians who do stand-up and they will make jokes about race and about gender identity and religion and et cetera, et cetera. But a comedian can't do anything but tell a joke. That's their job. That's literally their job. And some comedians will tell jokes that will rub people the wrong way. Some comedians will tell jokes that are just completely ridiculous. I mean, if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen to them. But they're doing their job. That's their job. And some of them are just really disgusting and crass, and some of them are very clean. It all depends on what you're looking for. I'm not one to tell an entertainer what to talk about, what to sing about. That's your job. That's what you do. You're getting paid to do this. Do whatever the hell you want. I don't have to buy it. I don't have to encourage it. I don't have to tell people to listen to it. But I also cannot control what you do. This is a democracy. There are so many voices out in the world. So many voices. So many things to talk about. Find something that speaks to you, because there's going to be a lot of negative, a lot of microaggressions, a lot of aggressions. So you have to find something that speaks to you. Comedians, they tell jokes. That's their job. But when a comedian employs a woman as his assistant and is constantly belittling her in ways that make her feel less than human, or less than a man would have felt in that same position, that's a microaggression. When he's hired to entertain a group of pilots who all happen to be Arab, and he's not Arab, and he's telling jokes about them being terrorists, that's maybe it's a microaggression. Maybe he's just an asshole. So there's that. But it's when you take the joke and you use it to make the people around you feel small. Or you take the line of thinking, the way of thinking, that prejudice that you have, and use it to discriminate against others. Microaggressions are often subtle. But again, their impact is far-reaching if they impact a person's self-esteem or alter their view of their importance in a particular setting. Or it makes them feel disrespected by people who should respect them, or act humane in general. So you're going into a workplace and you're expecting people are just very welcoming. You've looked at the website and it says, oh, here at so-and-so LLP, we have a diverse environment, and they're promoting diversity. And you see pictures of Black people and Asians and whites and Hispanics. And you're like, oh, okay, I should feel at home here. And you get there and you start work, and it's completely the opposite. People are asking you, why do you wear your hair like that? People are looking at pictures of your kids and they're going, oh, are you married to a white guy? People are looking at you and asking you why you're dressed like that. Or people are making jokes about how all Black men are basketball or football players. And it's ridiculous. So in there's an article I read online titled "Microaggressions Are a Big Deal, How to Talk Them Out and When to Walk Away" by Kevin Nadal, published on NPR.org. He defines the term, if you're looking for a definition of microaggression, he defines the term as everyday, subtle, intentional or unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate a bias towards historically marginalized groups. Now that definition is a bit limiting in my opinion, because microaggressions really are out here applying to everyone now. It turns out that we are secretly, subconsciously jerks to everyone. All walks of life, handicapped people, disabled people, people with chronic illnesses, veterans, people who have pets that they call their kids, women, men, we are just like this to everyone. Everybody is facing this. And I talked about empathy last week, but empathy is one of the reasons why people who don't like these microaggressions, who don't use them, because they're comfortable with people from all walks of life. They've interacted with people from all walks of life. They've read books about them. They've talked to them. They've chatted them up. They understand that there are people who don't look like them, who don't talk like them, and it doesn't bother them. They don't care. Like, our differences are great. We can get together and share a traditional dish from our culture, religious or racial culture, and that's great. But I'm not going to go around telling people jokes, and I'm not going to mock your accent, and I'm not going to tell you your clothes are ugly because they don't look American. We're very open people. But so microaggressions, again, happen to everyone. You could be obese. You could be skinny. we really can be awful to so many people, and it's not funny. It's not cute. And yeah, okay, so call me woke if I don't want people picked on, if I don't want people treated badly because of their size. Call me woke, fine. I'll be woke. So I mentioned Florida, and the legislature recently passed bills. One is called the Stop Woke Act, or Stop Wrongs Against Our Kids Act, and the Parental Rights Education Bill. Both are supposed to make it harder for teachers to bring up the subject of critical race theory, so as to not make whites feel put upon, like they are evil, like they are responsible for all of the ills of American society, like they enslaved all of the blacks and make black people feel icky and gross and stupid and ugly, and they should be whipped, and poor white people, right? But the latter, at least the Parental Rights Education Bill, precludes teachers from also discussing gender identity and topics surrounding sexuality while in the classroom. So, but, okay, here. You could say the F word or the N word at school, and that would be just fine. But you can't talk about being gay. You can't talk about how the history of slavery in America informs so much of the behavior of American society, or the way businesses are run, or the way the architecture of a particular building. You can't talk about that. You can't talk about how American slavery informed today's economic system. You can't talk about that. You're not supposed to mention it, not supposed to bring it up. You're not supposed to talk about specifically the contributions of gay authors to American literature. You're not supposed to even mention it. Can't talk about it. Because parents have rights, and if a parent doesn't want their child hearing about that kind of thing, I'm doing the air quotes, then their child shouldn't hear about it. Their child shouldn't be made to feel like they're bad because they're white. Just as a side note, talking about slavery has nothing to do with you unless you were an enslaver. Okay? Talking about it has nothing to do with you unless you participated in it. So, I talked about my time at the University of Notre Dame. I talked about my time in the Islamic community here, and how there's so much unconscious bias. That's another word for microaggressions. It's called unconscious bias. And in fact, last year, despite working from home, my employer said, yes, you all are going to take unconscious bias training. And this is for every employee, everyone, from the managers to the top people, the top people. You all are going to learn about this. You're going to learn how to recognize it. You're going to learn how to knock it down. You're going to learn how to steer clear of it, et cetera, deal with it, report it. You're going to know. And there are some people who were very upset. Very upset. They don't want to have to learn about their biases. Because my God forbid, you're actually holding on to some stereotype or some biased view of a particular group or person, and you're using it in your language with them at work. You're using it in your conversations. You're laughing at them behind their back. Now, I work with people who are handicapped, who are veterans, who are black, who are white. And they work with me. Obviously, I'm a black Muslim. Lots of women, lots of men, people from all walks of life. And so just because we work together, because we know each other, doesn't mean we understand each other. And that lack of understanding, and that lack of understanding people in general, leads to some conflicts. People saying some things that perhaps they should not say, and we're all laughing it up and ha ha ha. And I've caught some people in some of these situations, and I won't mention their name, but it really, made me feel some kind of way about them, but it confirmed my suspicions about them. But these kind of people, there's nothing that you can do. I know they say you can go to human resources and et cetera, but at the end of the day, they're not going to get rid of this person because they're a high producer and they like high producers. And can't we just do something to resolve this? And we'll just have this, this person from civil rights, the civil rights part of the agency come and talk to you, and then we'll do some unconscious bias training, right? That's why there was unconscious bias training last year. There were, and the year before, there were the Black Lives Matter protests after the George Floyd murder. There were all these protests, and we had to make sure that people understood that sometimes they can say things that are hurtful or harmful. And it's like the first time they're realizing this information. It's like, wow, I had no idea. But yeah, wherever I go, I'm subject to this. And it is exhausting, let me tell you. I would rather people pretend like I did not even exist than for people to know that I exist and want to try to be relatable or funny or cute or go, oh, look, she's Muslim. Let's go after her. Just on, was it Saturday? It was Saturday. I was at the dollar store picking up some Dots candy. Dots are my weakness. Please help. And I had a couple boxes because they're $1.25. God. And I'm at the cashier. She's ringing me out and she goes, Assalamu alaikum. And I said, wa alaikum salam. And she's like, you guys got Ramadan coming up, right? And I just, oh my God. In my head, I'm thinking, God, please, I just want to get out of this store and go into my car and sit down and eat my box of Dots because it's that time for me and I just need it. Yes, Ramadan is coming up. Oh, so you're trying to get all the food you can in, huh? Oh, God, why did she say that? Why did she say that? You could have said nothing. She said something. So, yeah. So she tells the joke. And, yeah. I had to get out of there really quickly. Because I was going to say something that I did not think I should have said, probably would have regretted, which I'm known for doing in the past. But I could tell that this woman just wasn't, she wouldn't have gotten what I said anyway. Let's just put it that way. She would not have understood what I was saying because I don't insult people directly. I kind of do it in a roundabout way that makes them have to think about it. And yeah, I don't think she would have been able to make that calculation into the leap. You know what I'm trying to say. So back to my days at Notre Dame, because everyone knows that's my point of reference for so many things. Because 4 years there with people from all walks of life. It was amazing. It was wonderful. But the funny thing about it is that if you were male and black and you were at Notre Dame and you didn't play football, people looked at you weird. They wanted to know why. There were a lot of black men there, and most of them played football. But a lot of them didn't. They were there for the academics, if you can believe it or not. They were there because they wanted to attend the University of Notre Dame, believe it or not. Believe it or not all black men play football or basketball. Come on, people. Not everyone who's black and covers their head is from Africa. Not everyone who speaks Spanish is from Mexico. There are actual people living in the United States who are American citizens born in the United States who speak Spanish, whose parents are probably from Mexico. They could be from Chile. They could be from Peru. They could be from Argentina. They could be from Spain. I remember sophomore year. Gosh, this story sticks with me. Good Lord. I was in my English class, and my professor, who was white, for whatever reason, decided to refer to Black Americans as the Negroid race. And my ears perked up, and I looked up from my note taking, and I couldn't do anything after that. And I went up to him after class and I said, we don't refer to ourselves as the Negroid race. Nobody calls us Negroids. That's something from like the 1900s, the 1920s, from the eugenics days. We don't call ourselves Negroids, just like you don't call Asians or indigenous people, you don't call them Mongoloids. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He had no idea. You're a tenured professor at the University of Notre Dame, and you have no idea that Black people, we don't call ourselves Negroids? Are you serious? But yeah. Oh, he didn't mean anything by it, though. He didn't mean anything by it. Oh, he's so sorry. He's very apologetic. Didn't mean anything by it. And I left class, and I remember that story. That was over 25 years ago. Was it 25 years ago? Da-da-da, boo, 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 boo. It was over 20 years ago. And I remember that. I'll never forget that. Because what happened next was just as bad. My roommate at the time, I was a junior. My roommate at the time, no, was I a junior? Good Lord, I'm old. No, I was a sophomore. Okay, yeah. My roommate at the time, she was Hispanic. She is Hispanic. She said, after I told her the story, she said, well, the word is in the dictionary, so what's the big deal? And I nearly lost my shit on this girl. And I went to the dictionary and I looked up a certain word that people used to refer to people like her, Hispanic people. And I said, well, this word is in the dictionary, but I would never use it because it's a racial slur. I would never use it. And there are all these words in the dictionary you would never use because they are slurs, because they are bad. You would never call somebody this. You would never say this to people. You don't get to say these words just because they are in the dictionary when you are referring to people. You don't get to do that. And so that was kind of the beginning of the end of our living together. It just went downhill from there. But there are many examples of microaggressions, of course. I've given you so many examples. I've defined the word for you. There are published works all about microaggressions, and Grainger College published an online article called Examples of Workplace Microaggressions and How to Reduce Them. These categories include behavioral, environmental, and verbal. So behavioral is communicating a message with actions or symbols that display insensitivity to identity stereotypes. Environmental is the lack of representation or diversity, including gender, race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. And verbal is saying something that may not outright appear to be, but is disrespectful or offensive to a marginalized group. In the workplace, as the article states, microaggressions include those that appear as overt discrimination, prejudicial behavior, abuse, or harassment. The behavior can be unconscious and is not always overt. And then the article describes microaggressions that are often overlooked, which I thought was interesting. I have never heard of this before. But micro assaults, which are overt discrimination or criticism that is done intentionally to discredit a group. That is, put downs, belittling or bullying behavior, such as swastikas spray painted on a wall, cultural appropriation that mocks a group's dress or cultural norms, or language that makes another group feel inferior. The biggest example we have here in Cleveland, of course, is the formerly known as Cleveland Indians baseball team. For years, people have been fighting about this. For years. Okay, we know how it got started. There was a Native American player on the Cleveland baseball team. First ever in the history of Major League Baseball. Great, wonderful. Cleveland became known as the Cleveland Indians after that. They adopted the name Indians. First of all, that's problematic because they're not Indians. They're Native Americans. You can even call them indigenous. They're indigenous peoples. But anyway, it was the Cleveland Indians. What happened after that was that someone came up with this caricature that allegedly was approved by some Native Americans of this red-faced guy with a big nose and a feather in his cap. And then it morphed over the years to be a dark red face and this huge grin and this feather coming out of his hat, his bandana, or his, I can't think of what it's called. And then there would be people, white people, who would dress up in Native American garb and paint their faces red and blue and beat on drums and wear Native American headdresses at the baseball games, make total asses of themselves. Now, it's one thing to call the team the Cleveland Indians. That's one thing. But when you're mocking Native American culture to support a baseball team, name the Indians, well, that's something else entirely. That's you making an ass of yourself. And in order to get away from that, in order to get away from what many Native Americans living in the area deem offensive, stereotypical, racist. I also deem it that because that is exactly what it is, a racist caricature. After years of appealing to the team to change the name, they finally decided to change it. Last year, they adopted the name the Guardians. They're now known as the Cleveland Guardians. Now, I would have preferred they just called themselves Cleveland Baseball, but they didn't want to go with that. They had to have a name, a mascot, etc., etc. Cleveland Guardians. It has something to do with there's a bridge downtown. I think it's the Veterans Memorial Bridge, and there's a huge guardian statue. I've seen it. It's beautiful, wonderful, whatever. You could have been the Cleveland baseball team. But a lot of people, especially white people, had a problem with this name change. And they blamed woke culture and cancel culture for the team having to change the name. But there's no woke, there's no cancel, nothing involved in this. People are tired of being made fun of. People are tired of having their culture used in a mocking way, in a stereotypical way to promote your fucking sports teams. And they have every right to feel that way. And they have every right to demand that be changed. And these teams are very much on the right side of history when they get rid of them, when they change them. So you can be mad all you want to. You want to hold on to your little racist tropes and the stereotypes and the jokes because that stuff keeps you warm at night because you're thinking of one right now in your head and you're going to use that zinger at work. You're going to go make fun of the Puerto Rican guy at your job. And it makes you feel good. Oh, he knows I don't mean anything by it. These are just jokes. If that makes you feel good, you go ahead and be that jerk. You go right on ahead. But the people around you who are not jerks are not going to put up with it. And you're going to face a lot of backlash. You're going to face a lot of time in HR. You're going to face a lot of your kid who is friends with Puerto Ricans, who has more empathy than you've had in your entire life, telling you, hey, Dad, that joke is not funny. Shut up. Just saying. There are also, as this article goes on to say, micro insults. So there are micro assaults, and now there are micro insults. A micro insult is a comment that communicates that the demographic group is not respected. So the comment is thrown out as a compliment. Oh, I love it when black women do their hair like that. Oh, I wish I could do my hair like that. My hair would never get kinky like that. My curls could never get kinky like that. So it's thrown out as a compliment, not as a stereotype, And the person delivering the insult does not know that it is an insult because of their unconscious bias or prejudice. For instance, what I just said about the hair, but also exclusionary policies, favoritism in career fields, when you have only males being pilots, being airline pilots, and only females can be nurses, things like that, policies like that, or only women, like back in the 1800s, only women could be teachers and only women could be nurses. They couldn't be doctors. They couldn't be preachers. They could work in the laundress. They could be a laundress. They could be a teacher. They could be a nurse. And then the men were the doctors. The men were the airline pilots. The men ran the railroads. The men were the oil barons. Women couldn't do that unless they inherited the position. But also statements like, I don't see color, are the next example of what we call micro invalidations. So there are micro insults, micro assaults, and now micro invalidations. That is dismissing the experiences of historically marginalized groups by saying, I don't see color, when you know full well that the target of that comment identifies strongly with their ethnicity, race, color, etc., racial identity. You know someone who's very strongly black, very. And you look at them and go, well, I don't see color. I don't see why you have to act like that, because here we're open. We don't see color. Like if you go to France, France is not allowing Muslim women to wear hijab in the workplace or at university. And really they try to make women take it off altogether, because they say that if you are identifying as a particular religion, like if you're Jewish, you can't wear anything that says that you're Jewish. You can't wear the yarmulke. You can't wear the Star of David. You can't, I don't know how women would identify. Maybe they wear skirts. They don't wear pants. But you cannot wear any garb that makes other people feel different from you in order to create a homogeneous society where everyone is the same. No one feels left out. Everyone feels included. No one feels put upon by someone's religious beliefs or cultural beliefs. You can't wear your whatever. You if you're a Sikh, you can't wear your turban. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's okay to see color. It's okay. What's not okay is you making somebody feel inferior or insignificant or put out or small or like they don't belong, like an outcast, because of their race, because of their religion, because of their culture. It's okay to acknowledge it, but what you do not do is use it against them. You see? Acknowledge it, don't use it against them. Acknowledge it, don't harp on it. Acknowledge it, don't run up to them the first time you see them and go, oh, tell me all about life in South Africa. Because you're South African and language you speak, I want to hear you do them clicks that you people do with your tongues. Don't be stupid. Don't be an ass about it. But people are, so here I am talking about it. Now that people are returning to the workplace after a pandemic-imposed hiatus, anxiety about interacting with others is renewed. Yes, I saw these posts on Instagram and Twitter, and that's what led me to want to talk about this, but also the legislation that's being passed into law in Florida. And I thought, I got to talk about this. I got to talk about microaggressions, because it creates anxiety in people. It creates depression. It makes people feel like they need to withdraw from society. Kids want to be homeschooled. People don't want to interact with other people because they feel different. Not just different, but so different that they know it's going to impact them negatively because they're not going to be treated well. They're going to be disrespected. They're going to be taunted. They're going to be made fun of at work, at school. These are places where you're spending 8+ hours a day. Nobody wants to go through this. Nobody should have to go through that. We should be making it easier for people to be who they are in these spaces so that anybody can go work anywhere. Anybody can go to school anywhere. We should not be making it harder for people. But here we are, again, making it harder because somehow making it easier feels wrong, and it angers people to be told that maybe you're biased, maybe you're prejudiced, maybe you're sexist. People don't like hearing that. They don't like hearing that their jokes at work next to the water cooler, oh, that's sexist. They don't like hearing that. Oh, come on. Can't you take a joke? Come on. I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't mean anything by it. That well-meaning person who never means anything by what they're saying, but they're saying it so much and so often that you know they mean something, that you know that there's something inside of them that isn't clicking, that they're not getting, that there's something inside of them that is bothering them about your presence at the place you are at. Now, myself, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to be anywhere, go anywhere, do anything, and I'm going to handle myself accordingly. I go anywhere I want. It used to be that I would feel like I had to explain myself to everybody and everything. Now I don't do any of that. I will ignore the hell out of people, especially ignorant people, especially people who are saying things and making jokes like they are just not even worth my time. Because to me, that's you showing me that you feel uncomfortable. I don't feel uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable, very relaxed, very good. I'm good, honey. That's you. You feel uncomfortable. You feel put upon. When somebody walks into a room who doesn't look like you, you're suddenly breaking out into a sweat and tripping all over yourself and saying racist and sexist and ableist things and transphobic things and making homophobic. You're just making a fool out of yourself. And we're just as calm and cool as can be. We're great. Sipping on that free water at the CLE class. We're fine. So now that people are returning to the workplace, as I said, whereas working from home meant a break from judgmental attitudes of others, for the most part, the return to work means a return to an unwelcoming environment where you're forced to think everyone's opinion of you matters because you are incessantly bombarded by questions about your race, nationality, clothes, hair. People were always wanting to touch my hijab. And, oh, what do you call that thing you're wearing? I don't want to say it incorrectly. What do you call that thing you're wearing? And, oh, I just want to touch it. It's just so sparkly. It's so beautiful. Okay, lady. Workplaces have in these recent years ramped up their diversity and inclusion policies, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, I will say, because of the Black Lives Matter protests. And we can pinpoint a time when this became mandatory, and now it's completely mandatory for many workplaces. But even working from home, you may face some of these opinions because people have email. They have email, they have Skype, they have Zoom, they can still see you. You may not be in front of them, but just that does not stop people for some reason. It doesn't stop people from saying ignorant things and pretending like they had no idea. And during the pandemic, employers realized something that they had let fall by the wayside, and that is employee mental health. And like I said before, microaggressions they can lead to depression and anxiety. They certainly lead to anxiety. If you have to literally talk yourself into going into a workplace because the people there are they're just on you. They're on you with their questions. You got a new hairstyle. You went from a pixie cut to lemonade braids. You're going to have to go in there and people are going to want to touch your hair. They're going to want to ask you about your hair. Oh, how did you go from short hair to long hair in 2 days? And they're going to say things that are just so ignorant and you don't want to have to deal with it. But every time you change your hairstyle, this is what you're faced with. Every time you wear a new hijab, even for me, every time I wore a new hijab, I knew it. This is what I was going to be faced with. Every time, you're a black girl and you're dating a white guy and you have a baby and the baby comes out light skinned. Oh, see? And you were worried it'd be dark skinned. And it's like, who was worried? People just say whatever, and it's ridiculous. You don't want to have to explain yourself. You just want to be free. You want to relax. You want to just work. And, one day you're not Muslim, the next day you are, and you're wearing hijab, and now you have to explain to everybody why your head is covered. Oh, God. So once you figure out what the problem is, that implicit bias impacts employee mental health, the micro assaults, the micro insults, and the micro invalidations that are going on at work that are impacting your employees. Once people figure that out, then they can do something about it. Hopefully they do something about it. And that you're not floating out there alone. And every time there's an issue in one of these things, you feel like there's nowhere to turn to. But there is somewhere to turn to. It's called human resources. And every time somebody says something foolish out of their mouth, I want you to make sure that you report it. If it's directed at you, if you hear it. I had this issue before. Few years ago, somebody said something that was and I reported it, and that resulted in some actions being taken. You don't have to be the target of whatever is coming out of people's mouths. You can do the right thing and stand up for people. It's not that, free speech, freedom of speech. Yeah, freedom of speech, fine. Not freedom from consequences of speech, honey. Remember that. When you're at work and you're saying whatever you want, remember that. There are consequences for what you say and what you do. If you're constantly targeting a particular person, if you're harassing a particular person because of their ethnicity, their culture, their race, it's going to come back on you. You can only get away with that for so long. Either somebody is going to notice it and report you, or the person you're targeting is going to go to HR. Or, God forbid, the person you targeted is going to go upside your head. I do not advocate violence. Please do not get violent. I understand that enough is enough. You get to a point where you just cannot take it anymore. But please go through the proper channels. I say this as a lawyer. Please go through the proper channels. And while you may not experience microaggressions at work, guess what? If you're in a relationship or you're living with your parents or even in friendships, microaggressions permeate every facet of our lives. It is ridiculous. Microaggressions affect the quality of your relationships with people. They make a boardroom less efficient. I couldn't even read my own handwriting. They make a boardroom less efficient, okay? If you want a strong work environment, you want a good workforce, you're going to get rid of these biases. You're going to get rid of these microaggressions. That's how you're going to ramp up your workforce. You're going to make sure your employee mental health is at 100%. And you're going to do so by getting rid of this ridiculousness that people are letting fly out of their mouths and their behavior, from the managers to the custodians. So if they can make a boardroom less efficient and toxic, imagine what it does to your relationships. It also makes them weak and toxic. Yes. Effective relationships are loving and caring bonds where people own their bad behavior and make the other person feel safe and respected. Gaslighting, we talked about that before. Gaslighting is a prime example of a microaggression. Yeah, it's subtle. Real gaslighting is subtle. That's why you don't notice that it's happening. And it goes on for so long, you don't notice it because it's very subtle. But gaslighting is a prime example of a microaggression in a relationship. It's essentially, as I said before, creating self-doubt and confusion in the target to make you question yourself instead of the problematic or dangerous behavior of your partner. There is also anger and resentment that builds along the way when people do not communicate with each other. When people do not communicate with each other. There you go. I had to think about that because in relationships, communication is number one prime reason, example of why relationships fail. People do not communicate. And when they're talking to each other, they're talking poorly to each other. They're putting each other down. They're calling each other names. They're cussing at each other. Or they're being abusive in their language. They're being abusive in their behavior. They're not communicating properly or at all. Sometimes people aren't talking to each other at all, and the relationships fail. If you want your relationship to work, you're going to be loving and caring. You're going to own your bad behavior. You're going to make the other person feel safe and respected. You're not going to engage in gaslighting. You're not going to engage in these microaggressions. You're going to be supportive. Okay? However, people don't admit their bad behavior. And they certainly aren't asserting themselves and standing up to bad behavior, which is a problem. And some examples in relationships are where anger and resentment build and manifest are, as I took them from an article called The Exceptional Relationship, an article on microaggressions. It's at theexceptionalrelationship.com. And this is their article on microaggressions and relationships. And the author says, as an example of this behavior, poking fun at some behavior of our partner that we know causes shame, ignoring his or her efforts, withholding any verbal expression of affection, touch, smile, laughter, not remembering to act on things he or she asks of us, stereotyping our partner based on gender. Of course, men do this, women do that. Condescension. Oh, you're so stupid. You didn't even go to college. I should have married somebody who went to college. And violating the partner's confidentiality. Do you have a partner who has a BFF or a family member, and every time something happens in your relationship or you tell them something, they run and tell it to another person? Automatically, 100%. I tell my friend everything. I tell my partner, I tell my partner's business to all my friends. They know all about your sex life. They know all about your finances. They know all about your kids' issues. They know everything about you. Yeah, stop that. Violating a person's confidentiality is a microaggression. If I ask you not to tell something about me to someone else, something that I'm ashamed of or something that makes me feel self-conscious, something that makes me feel insecure, like, for instance, weight, of course. Weight is something that most of us are grappling with, struggling with. If I tell you something like I'm trying to lose weight, or I'm showing you my body and you're looking at all the rolls and whatever, rolls of fat or whatever, don't run and tell your friends. Don't show the pictures to your friends. Don't laugh with your friends about your partner. Don't do that. There are some slights that your partner can make, for instance, about the weight thing. They could say, hey, you've put on some weight in the last, that pandemic fat you got going on there. It makes, I'm not really interested in having sex with you anymore because you're fat. And they'll say fat instead of put on some weight or gain some weight. They'll say fat. Or ever since you lost your job, you're no fun to be around. You just lay around on the couch and you play video games. You're a total waste. You were actually worth something when you were working. A lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic. A lot of people put on weight during the pandemic. A lot of people, found themselves sick with COVID, and that had a lasting impact on their physical and mental health. A lot of us have changed. And for some of us, our partners or family members won't let us forget it. So other slights, of course, is when a man tells his wife that it's her job to cook and clean, because she's the wife, or the woman tells the husband, get off your butt and go get a job. It's your job to bring money home. You're not working enough. You're the man. You're supposed to take care of us. These things are unhealthy and they're relationship killers. As I said, they weaken your relationship. This language, this behavior, this misogyny, this sexism, this, making fun of your partner, poking fun at something your partner can't do. Like if you're a man, you're supposed to know how to use a drill. And if you're a woman, you're supposed to know how to cook. And the man is always making fun of you because you don't know how to cook. And the woman is always making fun of you because you can't fix anything around the house. You're useless. You always have to pay somebody to fix something. And as with the annoying coworker, when a partner makes a remark to you that seems passive, biased, or slight, the best thing you can do, even instead of ignoring them, ask them, what do you mean by that? Turn it on them. Yeah, make them explain it. It's the same with a coworker when they make a stupid joke about, it's Diwali, and they start doing that stupid mocking Indian accent that you hear from Apu on The Simpsons. What, why are you making that accent? Why are you saying that? Why are you talking like that? What do you mean by that? What are you doing? Make them explain their behavior. A lot of people don't understand why they say the things that they do, and they can't explain it to you. So when you ask them, what do you mean by that? They don't know. And if you don't know what you meant by it, why are you saying it? Oh, I was just trying to be funny. Why do you think that's funny? Why is that funny? But better thing is, why is that funny? They can't explain why it's funny. They don't know why they said it. They can't explain why it's funny. Oh, well, maybe then you should stop saying it. Maybe you should stop doing that mocking voice, that mocking Mexican accent. Maybe you should stop pretending to be a woman, showing how women act when they're at the hair salon or when women are cooking, they're in the kitchen. I see all of these comedians who make a living off of pretending to be women. It's fine. Some of it is funny, but most of it is like, okay, this is too much. This is mocking, actually. You guys are mocking women, and you think it's funny, and a lot of people laugh at it. I've stopped laughing because it's not funny anymore. Like, all women who are school principals act like this, and all women who are old church ladies act like this, and all women who are at the salon act like this. You know what you can do with that? You can shove it up your ass. I'm tired of it. It's not funny anymore. It's exhausting. It's silly. It's stupid. I'm tired of it. Why don't you, instead of pretending to be a woman, be a man and show men how silly they act? Show men in stereotypical situations. I don't see enough of that. Would love to see more of that. Actually, how about we drop stereotypes altogether? How about we drop them? Don't even engage in them. They're ridiculous. And people feel like they have to laugh because everyone around them is laughing, when really they're cringing inside. They're embarrassed. They feel as if everyone's looking at them. Just stop it. Or not. Maybe that's how you make your money. Whatever. And I want to make the point that there is no reason at all, if you're feeling uncomfortable, to let these comments slide. There's no reason. Even in the workplace, there are always ways to address behavior, including confronting the person. But as I said before, human resources, avail yourself of it. No company wants to have to deal with a civil rights lawsuit or an employment discrimination lawsuit. They don't want to have to deal with it. It's long, it's tedious. They'd rather address everything in-house, put it to bed. So avail yourself of the things that are available to you as an employee. And if you're in a relationship with a person who's putting you down, if they're not going to stop, get out of the relationship. Because that stuff is going to kill you. It's going to kill your self-esteem. It's going to make you feel small, insignificant, to the point that you're not going to be taking care of yourself, or you're going to feel like you have to you're going to feel like you have to get all of this cosmetic surgery. You're going to get the butt lift, and you're going to get, the lip injections, and you're going to get the facelift, and you're going to change your hair, add all this weave and wigs to your hair, and you're going to get the eyelashes and and you're going to do all of these things, or you're going to get muscles, or you're going to starve yourself to be thin. You could develop an eating disorder. Yeah. So if this person that you're with is engaging in this kind of behavior, you let them know that it's hurting you. You let them know that it's hurting your relationship. And if they care about you and the relationship, then they'll stop. And if they don't stop, then you have to care about yourself. And you have to get out of it. Period. It's not going to get better if they're not stopping when you ask them to stop. And that's the other thing. You have to say it when it bothers you. You can't just let these things go. You can't let it build up, because it'll build up and build up and build up, and it'll explode into something. It'll be an incident at work where you're just completely flying off the handle and cussing somebody out. Or you'll be cussing out your partner at the dinner table because you've heard one too many jokes about how the food isn't as good as his mom's food. So, but a microaggression is not the same as a criticism. We should all be open to receiving criticism, but you can tell the difference between microaggressions and criticism, because microaggressions are patently, blatantly sexist, racist, ableist, transphobic, homophobic, and they're unfair. Some criticisms can be unfair, yes, but a microaggression is always unfair. Saying someone needs to change their hair color because it does not fit their face is not the same as saying someone should not have that hair color because of their face. Like black women. Saying black women should not have blonde hair because how could a black person have blonde hair? And then we all have to go through this Googling examples of black people with blonde hair, and we show them black people with blonde hair to make them shut up when they should not have said the thing to begin with. But saying, hey, you know what? That color, I don't know. It really doesn't go with, the shape of your face or whatever. They have red hair, or they have black hair or blonde hair. It's not the same as saying, you're black. You probably shouldn't have red hair. There's a difference. There's you criticizing my haircut and you criticizing my haircut because of my race. Well, you're white. You really shouldn't have micro braids. That's really not a white hairstyle. You hear that a lot, right? Asking someone why they're sagging their pants, it's not the same as remarking, look at that black guy sagging his pants. That's why they don't get hired here, because they're always sagging their pants. And you know what people who sag their pants do? They steal. So we don't want people like that working here. And encouraging your partner and taking care of their health is not the same as remarking that they're no good in bed anymore because they've put on a few pounds. Encouraging your partner to take care of their health is not the same as going, you're a fat slob. Would you get your fat ass up off of the couch and go for a walk, you fat blah, 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 blah. It's not the same as, hey, we went to the doctor the other day and the doctor mentioned something about your cholesterol numbers are up or your blood pressure is up. Maybe we can go for walking, a 30-minute walk a few times a week. Maybe we should try some healthier dinner options or lunch options. Frame it as I care about your health versus I can't stand looking at you because of the way you look. Right? The latter is hurtful and harmful. And as I said before, they weaken the bonds that you have with a person, and they can weaken a classroom environment. It could have, if the students aren't feeling their best, their work is going to reflect it. If the students at the school are feeling bullied and whatever, their work is going to reflect that. Their mental health is going to reflect that. If people come to work and they're anxious or they're sad all the time because someone is always picking at them, or every time they bring some curry to warm up in the microwave, people are going, ugh, what's that smell? It changes them. It makes them feel less than who they are. It makes them feel small. It makes them feel like, well, maybe I should only bring in lunch that smells like a hamburger. It makes you feel like you can't eat what you want to eat, dress how you want to dress, be who you want to be, because you won't fit in, or because people will remark loudly about it, or people will ask about it, and they're not nice in how they ask about it. The one key thing that people do not get about their words is that sometimes it is not the intent that matters, but the impact on the people who hear them. So, for instance, Juliana Rancic a couple years ago had to apologize to Zendaya because Zendaya wore a dreadlock hairstyle to the Academy Awards, and I think it was the Academy Awards, or maybe it was the Emmys, but they were doing that red carpet pre-show, oh, what are you wearing? Who are you wearing? And Juliana said that Zendaya's dreadlocks smelled like patchouli. And of course, patchouli, incense is used to cover up the smell of what? Marijuana. And who do you associate with marijuana? Oh, of course, people with dreadlocks, or Jamaicans, Caribbean people. I mean, just this whole thing. And she had to apologize. And she said, I didn't mean any harm by it, but I have to understand that it's not the intent of the words. It is the impact of the words on the person, on the target, that matters. But, it's another one of those, I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't mean, it was harmless. And people will say this now, oh, he was 18 years old when he said it. He was a kid when he said it. Listen, I said a lot of things as a kid that I should not have been fucking saying. A lot of things about different kinds of people. And yeah, I could blame how I was raised. I could blame the environment that I was raised in, the community that I grew up in. But even that's no excuse. I was really only working from what had been instilled in me, what had been poured into me. But at some point, you realize that you're responsible for your words and actions, and you better be saying things that are meaningful, that uplift, that speak power into people, that are not hurting people, that are not making people feel insignificant about their culture or their race or their ethnicity. You become responsible for your words. It doesn't matter what age you are. There's so much information out now that we can't blame ignorance anymore. There's too much information available now. Although, if you're at a school in Florida, there may not be the information available. So you may just be plain ignorant because the information was not available in your schools. You weren't taught this in your school. And so you've become completely non-empathetic and insensitive to people who don't look like you. So how do we deal with microaggressions? I spoke about this earlier, but ask for clarification. According to the article published by the Grainger College of Engineering on a guide to responding to microaggressions, there are several ways to respond to this ridiculousness. 1, ask for clarification or more information, which they usually cannot provide because they've made this up. It's from a prejudice, it's from a bias. It has no real basis in anything. Acknowledge the feelings behind the statement. Sometimes you want to be sensitive to your partner and you want to go, hey, it sounds like you're feeling grumpy, frustrated, angry, nervous. Can we sit down and talk about this? Separate intent from impact. I know you did not realize it when you said it, but it was offensive because, and then tell them why it's offensive. Like I said, don't let things fly because they're going to take that behavior to other places. And they're really not going to know why what they said was wrong. They're not going to know. So you got to tell them. You have to explain it to them. Even if they don't understand why it was. When you ask for clarification, when they don't understand, you go, hey, this is offensive because express your feelings. Express your feelings. When you said this, I felt this way. And in the future, I would like you to. And then you tell them what you would like to happen in the future. Some people will tell you to piss off. And that's fine too. You don't have to interact with those people. People who refuse to acknowledge their bad behavior or their offensive words, you don't have to interact with them. And if you're finding that you have no choice because they work on the line next to you and work in the factory, let the people in charge know that this is a problem. And then maybe they'll move something around for you. They certainly should at least listen to you. And if you're a union protected worker, oh, well, then you have some options. Challenge the stereotype. This one is like, ugh. Actually, in my experience, I haven't had that particular experience with Mexicans. See, this one, I'm just like, whatever. Challenge the stereotype. How about we just tell them to shut the F up? Because that's not true. Challenge the stereotype. This one, puts it on the person who hears it to educate the person who said the thing. And I'm just really kind of like I'm tired on educating people. Like, you should know by now that saying Mexicans are rapists is offensive. It's bigoted. It's ridiculous. It's hurtful. Like, you should know that. You should know that. And if you don't, why don't you know this? But sure, I'll challenge the stereotype. Actually, in my experience, the Mexicans have been very nice people. I have some who work for me. I heard that on one of those housewives shows. And I was like, is this woman serious? They're nice? The ones that work for you are nice? Lady, come on. You can also appeal to values and principles. For instance, I know that you really care about the future of our relationship. Acting in this way really undermines those intentions, and it really does. You can promote empathy, as I said before, or you could, pretend like you don't understand. Do the, I don't get it. Why, what, you said my hair? I don't understand. I can't, it doesn't make sense, does not compute. You could use humor. I'm a fan of using humor. I like to make people feel ridiculous also. And if it is in a work or university school setting, remind people of the policies or rules governing that setting that they might be violating and that they may not want to violate because they could lose their job or get suspended or be placed on leave, et cetera, et cetera. You don't want that to happen. So you want to change what you're doing, what you're saying. You want to be better. You want to be smarter. You want to know more. You want to understand. And that is why I'm here. That is why I'm doing this podcast. And I have talked and talked and talked. And I hope that you have listened and listened and listened and heard what I've said, and that you understand that these words mean things and that your behavior impacts not only you, but the people around you, and that maybe you'll be open to understanding and learning about people who don't look like you so that you're not out there making an ass of yourself. Okay? And that is it for the episode on microaggressions. If you guys have any suggestions on topics that we can talk about, things that are in the news, I can do that. If you have some questions, shoot your questions to me at ayanaexplainsitall@gmail.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram at ayanaexplainsitall. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at lawgirl, LAWGURRL, and I'm also on Facebook. Ayana Fakir on Facebook, and we can chat, okay? Hope you have a great week and be good to yourselves. Goodbye.